My pity party was interrupted by the sight of two mysterious men in black suits heading into my boss's office. It didn't bother me. I didn't have time to do anything anyway. I couldn't take my mind off my own misery. I think my suffering started when I was a child. My mother constantly humiliated my father. Couldn't do this, couldn't do that, couldn't do anything. In fact, he could only do one thing: disappear. Day after day, I heard how horribly he was leaving us. Woe betide me if I ever tried to disagree with her. 90% of what I said to my mother was, "Yes, Mom." Wimp, nerd, mama's boy, weakling, etc. These were the insults I was subjected to in school. I was not a member of any sports team, no club, not even a chess club. I was bullied relentlessly. I never fought back. My salvation was the bully's conclusion that after a while, bullying me became uninteresting. Stephanie was what I called a rich girl beauty, meaning she wasn't a beauty queen, but she was rich, dressed well, and wore a lot of makeup. She hung out with pretty girls because her money made her acceptable to them. She seemed to be attracted to bad boys and had a reputation for being wild. A girl like that could only be attracted to me if there was something in it for her. In Stephanie's case, it was social studies classes. She never understood why she would want to know what dead people accomplished, much less when. I was blown away when she asked me to tutor her. She won me over with the smell of her perfume. The tutoring turned into doing all of her homework, which I was willing to do just to be able to spend time with her. I never dreamed she would date me, so I never asked. Her senior year of high school, her boyfriend's appendix burst just before graduation. I had the biggest thrill of my life when at lunch, she asked me if I would take her to prom with me. After 5 minutes of hesitation, I replied that I would. It cost me a few $100s and about 3 gallons of excitement-induced sweat, but I had a prom date. Rather, Stephanie had a backup for prom. When we were introduced, there were laughs and giggles. I didn't really care. We sat at a table with her friends. I got the first dance with her. It was the only dance I danced until the very end. She came up and asked me for the last dance. Stephanie apologized, explaining that dancing with others was the price of popularity. She pulled me so close to her that I felt her nice-sized breasts on my chest, and she felt my bulge on hers, down there. After the dance, I drove her home. She thanked me and kissed me on the lips. I don't remember how I got home. I heard that she changed clothes and went to a graduation party later that night. I didn't care. I took Stephanie to the prom. College was, for the most part, a repeat of high school. The insults still poured in from my peers. As for Stephanie, I was once again the tutor and her last-minute date with no one to accompany her. One quick kiss on the lips was all I got. I never went out with anyone else. Asking a girl out on a date was too scary. She'd probably say no anyway. Get married and have kids? That wasn't part of my plan. I just planned to work with computers. It would give me a good job and I wouldn't have to socialize much. Late one night, a visibly drunk Stephanie called late one night. "I have a proposition for you. How would you feel about marrying me?" I thought my head was going to explode. "What?" Stephanie explained that she was knocked up. She didn't know who the father of the baby was. None of the potential fathers were interested in her, and she wasn't interested in them. She was faced with the choice. Not if you were the last man on Earth. Apparently, I was the penultimate man on Earth. She said she liked me, and that I would be a good father and provide a stable home. The idea that I was malleable and easily manipulated didn't cross my mind, but looking back, I'm sure it was on her mind. I was afraid to tell my mother, and as it turned out, justifiably so. The news sent her blood pressure skyrocketing and she passed out. My wedding had to be postponed until after the funeral. Suddenly I had a wife, a house, and a nice life insurance inheritance. The fetus couldn't handle the alcohol Stephanie drank. It was stillborn. Some might conclude that Stephanie was trying to drown her grief after losing a child, but I knew she was just doing what she usually did before and after the birth of a child. I never told Stephanie what to do or what not to do. I was surprised she didn't ask for a divorce. It seems that somewhere along the way, Stephanie came to the realization that staying married to me was good for her image and a safe beachhead from which she could do whatever she wanted and go unpunished. At first, she was cautious in her dealings. Success forced her to become more open. I never challenged her. I was too grateful for her part-time job. I was afraid that if I fussed, I would be left without her altogether. Soon she began to openly talk about her cheating. "I'm leaving tonight, don't wait up for me," is what I heard if she said anything to me. Once in a while, I would get pity sex or sloppy seconds. That brings me to last night. My wife and her lover tied me to a chair. I had to watch while they had sex. When they were done, they explained to me what the role of a cuckold was and why I had better not disobey or even think about divorce. They told me I was weak. If I got sex from her once a month, I should be grateful. From now on, I would be a slave to her and her lover. As usual, there was no fight in me. In the past, I had conceded to my wife whatever she wanted, so why should I stop now? What more could I do? My musings were interrupted by the appearance of my boss in the doorway. With him were the two men I had seen earlier. "Bruce, these men are here to offer you a special training program. I think it would be a good idea for you. You will be paid during the training program." "What kind of training program is this?" One of the men replied. "Vital?" "I don't understand." "Do you like the life you are living now?" I thought for only a second. Why lie? "No." "Then please sign this consent form for the training." I wasn't used to making my own decisions, even in important matters. I asked my boss if I should do it. He said I should, and I signed it. After I signed, another man who was silent notarized the application. I was told to get going. Any questions I had about my job, notifying my wife, gathering clothes, toilets, etc., were answered with, "Don't worry, everything will be taken care of." I was escorted to the proverbial black car. I sat down between two men. One of them got my attention and the other injected something into my arm. "Stay awake, Bruce." When I awoke, I was escorted to a mountain lodge, a luxurious mountain lodge. I was given wonderful coffee and told that I would be briefed when the cobwebs in my brain cleared. A large, tall, very trim man invited me to sit at a round table by the huge fireplace. "Mr. Pennington, I know you have many questions. I'll briefly bring you up to speed, and then you can ask whatever you wish." The people here are members of an organization called WIMPs. It stands for Warriors, Inner, Mental, Physical, Sexual. All of us men and women have been called WIMPs by former spouses and others. We have all learned to become independent people who no longer allow people to go along to get along. You have been selected to go through the training. At the end, you will be a new person, a person you will be able to look at in the mirror and respect. Our training is very intense and lasts 90 days. Questions? 90 days? I'm going to lose my job. No, you won't. Your boss has agreed to keep your job. Frankly, because of the way you behaved, you were going to be fired. Your job is one of the things this training will save or improve. My wife, does she know what's going on? She's the last person we want to be kept in the loop about what we're doing. Do you really care what your unfaithful wife thinks? What kind of wife has sex with her lover in front of her husband? Have you heard what they have planned for you? You may not like it, but you will thank us later. Your wife will be served with separation papers and instructed not to attempt to contact you during this time. The graduation and the 90-day separation coincide. After that, you are free to do whatever you wish. If you file for divorce, it can be done in 60 days. What if she rips me off financially during that time? That's already been taken care of. Half of all your assets have been transferred to a new account in your name only. One of our lawyers is working on protecting even more of your assets. Our private investigator already has photo, video, and audio evidence that can be provided to her lover's wife and her boss. Her lover works at the same place, so there are plenty of options for revenge. How can you do all this legally? First of all, you gave us full power of attorney. Second, who says anything we do is legal? What we do is fair. Surely you know that fairness and legality are not always the same. Any other questions? I was still in a daze. I had resigned myself to what was next for me. What did I have to lose? My next day started bright and early, stretching, a walk, and then food, eating the worst-tasting food I've ever tasted. But they said it was healthy. After working out before breakfast, I was hungry enough to eat shit. I don't know what shit tasted like, but it couldn't have been much worse than what I had to eat 5 times a day. After my pre-breakfast workout, I was exhausted and wanted to take a nap. But naps weren't on the agenda. First, there was a full physical exam. I was deemed healthy enough to undergo training. Then there was basic training. I was made to do squats, push-ups, barbell exercises, sprints, and other feats of strength, speed, and endurance. My head instructor had the saddest look on his face. He took a deep breath and said, "We have a lot of work to do." The first week was almost entirely devoted to physical improvement. I worked harder on the first day than I had in the last 5 years. There were a lot of muscle-building exercises, 8 hours after lunch. I was sweating, huffing, and puffing, and I felt like my heart was about to jump out of my chest. I had made the mistake of complaining. It felt like 10 of the worst drill instructors from hell had suddenly appeared and whipped me. Once burned, forever learned. My muscles ached badly, and it took me several hours of exercise the next morning to recover from the aches of the first day. Thankfully, it got better as the week progressed. At the end of the first week, I was placed in front of a full-length mirror. Next to the mirror was a life-size cutout picture of me when I first arrived. I couldn't believe the difference. I looked so much better. They explained to me that it would be easier to accept the rest of the workouts if I started to see a positive physical difference. There were many more body workouts, but they introduced classes to improve my self-esteem. Not all of them were positive. In fact, they were tearing me down to build me up. There were short classes where they would act out what my wife and her lover had said to me. Then they would ridicule me and ask why any man would put up with it. I was ashamed of the way I had behaved before. Then there were classes on how I could respond other than taking the insults. It was easy to turn my revenge on my wife and mistress into motivation to complete the training. Believe me, I needed all the motivation I could get. I received basic martial arts training. I wasn't taught a lot of techniques. According to the instructor, it was not necessary. Winning a fight depends mainly on the ability to use some techniques well, not on knowing a lot of techniques. I wore a gray training suit most of the time. I wondered why they didn't take some of my clothes or buy me new ones. Eventually, I realized that my body would change so much that buying clothes until my body remodeling was complete was not advisable. Then I also learned that most of my clothes were loser clothes. The dressing for success classes were a wake-up call for me. Toward the end, I got a makeover. I had heard of this for women, but had never heard of it for men. Believe me, it was worth it. What I enjoyed the most was the sex training. I learned how to control myself without the little blue pills. Foreplay, erogenous zones, positions were practiced on some of the most beautiful women I have ever seen. This training exhausted me like so many others, but I didn't even think to complain. At the end of the day, I looked great and felt great. I was ready to kick ass and take charge. They drove me back to my house. Her lover's car was parked in the lot, so I cautiously entered the house. I quickly made sure they were busy in the upstairs bedroom. I silently made my way upstairs. Once in the bedroom, I calmly approached and pulled her lover away from my wife by the hair. My wife didn't seem to recognize me right away. Her lover thought faster and began to reassert his dominance. He started threatening me and tried to hit me. I dodged him and smashed my toes on one of his feet. Then I knocked the spirit out of him and smashed his nose. I forgot about my wife. At that moment, the light went out. When I woke up, I saw that I was tied to the chair again. My wife and her lover were explaining to me my role as a cuckold. Then I was shocked. There was no indication that I had touched her lover. I looked all over my body as best I could. My old, weak, ugly body was back. And then I realized the wimp's training had never happened. It was a dream. I was back to my role as a cuckold. It felt like my mind and my heart were falling into an endless well. Nothing like it had ever fallen so fast and so hard. I almost burst into tears. Then I remembered the words of one of the instructors from my dream. When someone knocks you down, bounce back harder. I may have lost what I had accomplished physically in my dream, but I realized that the mental toughness training in my dream was coming from within me. I knew what I should be doing all along. That tough person who had gone through the training was still inside. I looked around for options. My wife and her lover decided to go to the guest bedroom since the bed in the master bedroom was too wet from their fluids. I had to wait and not cause any problems. As soon as they left, a plan matured in my head. I managed to rock back and forth until the chair fell forward and I was on my knees with the chair on its back. On my knees, I crawled over to the nightstand. I noticed that my wife had left her cell phone behind. I rocked the nightstand and the phone fell to the floor. It hurt terribly, but I was able to maneuver enough to pick up the phone with my left hand. After taking much longer than usual, I was finally able to dial 911. Fortunately, I knew the access code to my wife's phone. She often forgot it and relied on me to remind her. I told the dispatcher that I was being held hostage by my wife and her lover. "They're going to kill me." And I lied. I burned my knees on the way to the door. My wife begged me to fix the door for a long time. I was glad I ignored her. The door wouldn't close all the way. All I had to do to open it was push it, and it would swing back part way open. I pushed the door open with my head and quickly dropped to my knees. My knees were bleeding now, but I didn't care. Bending down, I was able to use the back of a chair to open the door wide enough to get out. I stopped. From the sounds my wife and her lover were making, they couldn't hear my efforts. I sprinted down the hallway between the rooms. Between the rooms was a landing at the top of the stairs. I managed to swing around and get the chair back into the correct position. Then, using all the strength I had in my legs, I stood up. The ropes were burning and bleeding my legs, but they were enough to get me 3/4 of the way up. I waddled to the top of the stairs, standing with my back against the top step. Then I began to wait. I laughed inwardly, thinking how glad I was that my wife's lover had finished early. He lasted longer than usual the second time. If only he could hold out long enough until I heard what I was waiting for. "Police, open up!" Soon I heard the rumble of the door opening. That was my cue. I shouted, "Don't push me!" With all the force I was capable of, I pushed off and flew down the stairs, first onto the chair and then on top of my bound body. The chair fell apart from the impact, as did several of my bones. My body and the pieces of the chair slid down where I looked up at the police officers. "Help me! They're trying to kill me!" By this time, 2 naked men were standing at the top of the stairs. The policemen pointed their guns at them. They were ordered not to move. My wife began to recount, "It's not what it looks like. He wanted to be tied up. We didn't push him." The police officers ignored her statements. She and her lover were told to get dressed and taken to the police station. I was taken by ambulance to the hospital. They told me that the 3 of us were just playing sexual games. I was supposed to be a willing participant. However, they had no proof that I had consented. My wife told me to ask her. I would corroborate her story. My story was completely different. I had just discovered my wife and her lover for the first time. They tied me up and threatened to kill me if I didn't agree to become a cuckold. I refused. When they went to their room to discuss how to get rid of me, I managed to get out of the room. Then they rushed at me and their touch made me fall down the stairs. The policeman told me what my wife had informed them. I said, "I did not tie myself to the chair. If I had consented, why would I still be tied? I could have died falling down the stairs. Why would I have taken that risk?" My story made more sense than theirs. By the time of the trial, I still had visible physical evidence of the injuries I had sustained as a result of being pushed down the stairs. Based on my appearance and the lack of evidence in favor of their side, they got 5 years for assault. They got off with an attempted murder charge. My divorce went through. I got the house and she got 50% of the joint assets. No alimony or family maintenance was awarded. As soon as I felt better, I went to work. My boss said, "It's long past time for you to come back. It was hard for the others to pick up your workload. Now get to work." "No." "What did you say?" "I quit." "Bruce, let's take it slow. We managed without you while you recovered. I think we can get by a little longer. Just let us know when you're back." As I walked past his sultry secretary, who I knew was eavesdropping, I noticed she was looking at me in a completely different way. I swear she was undressing me with her eyes. She said, "Let me know as soon as you get back. I have something for you." It was quite a while before I got back. I was a little surprised to find that my job was still open and I even got a raise. I found out that the receptionist had prepared something for me that several women had offered. What did I do while I was gone? Let's just say I was making a dream come true. Epilogue. 5 years later. I walked into the bar. Ernie, the bartender, was already waiting for me. "It's the one at the end of the bar, Bruce." I handed him a $100 bill. It was my standard finder's fee. I sat down next to the man. "Can I buy you a beer?" I'm not very good company. I'd love to be alone. Let me guess. Trouble with the woman? She wants you to agree to take a lover? How do you know? Ernie must have told you. Damn, busy body. He paused. You know, she doesn't just want a lover. She wants me to watch like I'm a goddamn, what do you call it? A cuckold? Yeah, one of them. I think I can help you. How? I started and run an organization called WIMPs. Here's the form I need you to sign. It will change your life for the better.